She's used to scraps, my sister said, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, as she shoved a paper plate into my hand without looking me in the eye. Then she turned her back and floated toward the chandelier-lit dining room like I wasn't even standing there. My fingers tightened around the flimsy plate. My kids, Micah and Ela, stood behind me like shadows, waiting. No one in that room flinched. No one laughed. Because to them, it wasn't a joke. I stood in the hallway for a beat too long, long enough to feel the burn in my throat. I couldn't cry, not in front of my children, not after everything. So I smiled, a smile I'd practiced for years, and whispered, "Come on, guys, let's go." I led them out through the side door into the garage, past Veronica's spotless kitchen, where people clinked wine glasses and complimented the cranberry sauce. The garage was cold, not just in temperature, but in spirit, the kind of cold that clings to your bones and says, "You don't belong here." A metal folding table was shoved into the corner, next to some forgotten storage bins and a dusty booster seat. 2 chairs, one upside-down milk crate. That was our table. Ela sat on the crate, smoothing out her dress like she still cared, like someone might notice the wrinkles. Micah didn't say a word. He just clenched his jaw the way he does when he's trying not to cry. I unpacked the food we were given, if you could call it that. A few turkey slices, pale mashed potatoes with no gravy, some overcooked green beans. No bread, no cranberry sauce, no warmth. I looked at my children, my everything, and tried to pretend this wasn't what it was, a calculated humiliation dressed up as hospitality. "Is this where we're eating?" Ela asked softly, her little voice cracking just enough to make my eyes sting. I nodded. "Yeah, baby, just for a little while." Micah picked at his food. "Why did they put us out here?" he finally asked, his voice flat, almost robotic. I didn't know how to answer. I'd spent my entire life making excuses for people who wouldn't even make room for me at the table. But now it wasn't just about me. It was about the way my kids were learning what it meant to be treated like less. Ela blinked fast, holding back tears. Did we do something bad? That shattered something inside me. I wanted to scream, to barge back in there and throw their perfect little dinner off the table, but instead I swallowed it down like I always had. That bitterness, that shame, that quiet rage. "No, sweet girl," I said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "You did nothing wrong." Micah pushed his plate away. "Can we just go?" I couldn't move. I wanted to. But something held me still, a quiet knowing, a voice inside that whispered, "This is the last time, the very last time." Then, as we sat in silence, the sound of laughter spilled through the wall like poison. I looked up just as headlights cut across the driveway, slow, deliberate, too sleek to be anything normal. A limousine, pulling around the side, toward the garage. "You'll never be like your sister." Those were the first words my mother said to me after I brought home a poetry award in 6th grade. I still remember the way her lips barely moved, like she didn't want to waste too much energy on disappointment. Veronica had just been named class president, again, and my little certificate with the gold sticker might as well have been a napkin scribbled with crayon. Growing up next to Veronica was like standing beside the sun, too close and you burned, too far and you froze. She was golden, perfect grades, perfect skin, perfect posture at every family dinner. I was the one who forgot her ballet slippers, who colored outside the lines, who cried too loudly when Dad left. By high school, the comparisons weren't even subtle. Veronica got her acceptance letter to Stanford, while I applied to a local college I could afford on financial aid. She brought home Blake, her smug, too smooth fiancé with his luxury watch and law school degree, and I showed up to Christmas dinner with ink-stained hands and a dream of being a writer. Mom looked at me like I'd shown up in pajamas. They always told me I was too much or not enough, depending on the day. Too emotional, too soft, too unrealistic. Not driven enough, not polished enough, not Veronica. But I kept showing up, kept trying, because some sick part of me believed that if I smiled hard enough, achieved something big enough, they'd finally turn toward me with pride instead of polite tolerance. So when I married Nate, a carpenter with calloused hands and kind eyes, I told myself love would finally be enough. It wasn't. The year Nate walked out, I didn't call my family. I knew what they'd say, that I had picked wrong, again, that this is what happens when you follow your heart instead of a checklist. I moved into a cramped two-bedroom apartment with Micah and Ela and worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Some nights, I cried so quietly into my pillow I gave myself migraines. And still, no one asked if I was okay. No one came. When Veronica threw her annual holiday party that year, she posted photos of her champagne tower and designer heels on social media. I stared at them in the glow of my phone while heating up instant noodles, listening to Ela hum from the other room, pretending Christmas still felt like magic. I kept thinking, just once, could someone ask how I was surviving? But that's not how they saw me. To them, I was the mess they never talked about, the one who couldn't hold it together, the cautionary tale wrapped in a hand-me-down coat. Still, every year I went back, hoping maybe this would be the year my mother wouldn't look past me, that Veronica would ask something real, that someone would see my kids and really see them, not as the byproducts of my failure, but as the miracles they were. Ela once asked me why we didn't live in a big house like Aunt Veronica. I told her, because ours is filled with love, and love makes it big enough. I meant it. But some days, it felt like a lie I was begging myself to believe. And maybe that's why I said yes to this Thanksgiving. Maybe that's why I ironed that secondhand dress until the seams gave way and spent our last $20 on sweet potato pie ingredients. Because some part of me still whispered, try again. But standing in that garage, with a paper plate in my hand and my children eating in silence, something in me cracked. Something old. Something that had been waiting a very long time. That's when I heard it, a low rumble. Not from inside the house, from outside. Tires rolling over the gravel driveway, and then headlights. The mashed potatoes were cold, but the silence was colder. Ela sat on a milk crate, her dress bunched beneath her like she'd forgotten she was supposed to be a little girl tonight. Micah was silent, jaw tight, stabbing at a slice of turkey that looked like it had been sliced yesterday and microwaved in plastic. I tried to lay out the food nicely on the folding table, make it feel like a meal, but it didn't matter. There was no warmth to dress it up, no candles, no grace. Just the sound of forks scraping against paper plates and laughter leaking in from the dining room like a wound that wouldn't close. I could hear Veronica's laugh, sharp, practiced, the kind that always sounded like it was meant for someone else's benefit. My mother's voice floated in next, light and lazy. Something about the Chardonnay being perfect this year. No mention of us. Not even a half-hearted, "Are they okay out there?" Micah finally looked up. "Why'd they put us here?" I didn't have an answer I could say out loud. I looked around the garage. Cardboard boxes, oil stains, the smell of gasoline and mold. There was a broken booster seat shoved against the wall like a relic from someone else's childhood, forgotten, unused, unwanted. And now, so were we. "They didn't have room," I said too softly. Micah's lips twitched like he wanted to believe me, but he was 12, old enough to know when adults are lying. He looked down again. Ela poked her sweet potato pie, but didn't take a bite. "Is it because we're poor?" she asked suddenly, her voice barely louder than the hum of the old fridge in the corner. "Is that why we have to eat out here?" I felt the heat rush to my face. Shame, fury, grief, all of it bubbling in my chest, fighting for space. "No," I said, firmer this time. "It's not because of that." "Then why?" she whispered. I looked down at her and tried to speak, but the words caught somewhere between my throat and the years of silence I'd swallowed. And then, Micah's voice cut through the air like a crack in glass. "Even the dishwasher's inside." That broke me. The dishwasher. A machine. It got a spot in the warmth beside the wine glasses and laughter. We got the garage. I tried to keep my composure, but my hand trembled as I reached for the napkins. "We'll eat," I said, "and then we'll go home. We'll have hot chocolate and play Monopoly, and we'll forget this night ever happened." "But we won't," Micah said quietly. "We'll remember it forever." I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I just nodded. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." He blinked. "Why? Because sometimes," I said slowly, "you have to see how people really see you. to finally stop caring. We sat there for a while, the air thick with everything unspoken. Hila leaned her head against my arm. Micah hadn't touched his pie, and then he whispered it. Can we just go? It wasn't a plea. It wasn't even a question. It was resignation, a soft goodbye to hope. That was the worst part. I opened my mouth to answer, but that's when the headlights hit the wall. A long shadow moved across the concrete. A vehicle, slowing. Not at the front door, at the garage. A limousine pulled into the driveway like it owned the world. At first, I thought I was imagining it, my brain trying to rescue me from the humiliation clinging to the air in that garage like mold. But then I saw it. Black, sleek, and silent. Not a visitor's SUV. Not one of Blake's smug clients. A full-length limo with tinted windows and the kind of shine that doesn't come from a car wash, but from money that's never had to apologize. Micah stood up so fast his chair scraped against the concrete. "Mom," he whispered, "that thing's pulling around." It didn't stop at the front door. It didn't even hesitate. The driver, in crisp uniform and white gloves, steered the car slowly, deliberately toward the garage. Isla gripped my hand so tightly I could feel the pulse in her fingers. "Is it for us?" The engine cut. A moment of perfect stillness followed. Even the laughter inside the house quieted, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then the door opened. She stepped out like the air made room for her. Tall, elegant, late 60s maybe, but in that timeless way that said she'd never been rushed, never been told to wait her turn. Her navy wool coat flowed behind her like a cape. Her hair was silver, swept back, and her heels made the kind of click that silences rooms. She didn't glance at the house. Not once. She looked straight at the garage. At me. I opened the door halfway, still half expecting security to show up and tell us we were blocking something important. "Excuse me," she said, her voice smooth as warm tea. "I'm looking for the owner of this house." My breath caught. "That would be my sister. She's inside." She tilted her head, studying me. "And you are?" "Callie? Callie Rivers." Something shifted in her face. Not surprise, recognition. "Yes," she said softly, stepping closer. "You're exactly who I came to see." Micah blinked. "Wait, what?" "I'm Margot Ellington, founder of Women Forward." She extended her hand. 5 years ago, you volunteered at a shelter on the South Side. Afterward, you wrote a series of blog posts. Raw, beautiful, unforgettable. I could barely breathe. "You read those?" "I never stopped." Hila gasped. "Because of her writing?" Margot nodded. "Because your mother has a voice that makes people feel seen. We're organizing a national summit this spring. This said, we need someone who can speak from the heart. I want you to be our keynote." My knees nearly gave. What? "There's more," she continued, calm and steady. "We're offering a publishing deal. A memoir, based on your story." The garage felt smaller now, but not in the same way. It wasn't shrinking me. It was peeling something open. Inside the house, behind the curtains, I could feel them watching. I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," Margot said, with a smile that didn't need convincing. "And let the rest unfold." Micah picked up our leftovers, like they mattered now. Hila clung to my side, eyes wide like she was seeing me for the first time. I looked back toward the house. My mother was at the window, frozen, wine glass raised halfway. Veronica beside her, lips parted in disbelief. For once, they weren't ignoring me. They were witnessing me. And then I said the word I'd never dared say in that house. Yes. Margot reached out, not like a rescuer, but like an equal. I took her hand, and as I stepped forward, Hila whispered, "Mom, is this real?" I looked down at her glowing face and said, "It's just the beginning." Behind us, the curtains snapped shut. But in front of us, the limo door opened again, this time waiting for all three of us. My sister dropped her wine glass. I didn't hear the shatter, but I saw it. Suspended in her hand, lips parted, frozen mid-breath as I stepped into the limo like I belonged there. Behind her, Blake hovered with that confused, twitchy energy of a man whose world didn't make sense anymore. And at the end of the table, my mother sat, stone still, her eyes narrowed, watching me like I was a ghost who had come back with a crown. But I wasn't dead. I was rising. Micah climbed in first, careful not to spill the leftover pie he cradled like it was treasure. Hila followed, her fingers still curled around mine. her little boots making soft thuds on the limo's carpet. I paused just long enough in the doorway to glance back through the garage's dusty window, through the parted curtains of the dining room where they all stood, silent, stunned. The same people who served me scraps and cold turkey, the same people who pretended not to hear my daughter ask if we'd done something wrong. Now they stood watching while a woman in a navy wool coat and diamonds waited for me. The limo door closed with a gentle click. Final, soft, like a seal on a new chapter. Inside, the world shifted. The seats were plush, the lights dim and golden, and Margot was already on the phone, arranging dinner downtown. Not just any dinner, reservations, a private room, space to talk contracts and publishing, and what kind of support I'd need in the coming months. I sat there, knees pressed together, hands in my lap, trying not to tremble. Not from fear, but from everything else. Years of swallowing pride, of hoping for scraps, of standing small in rooms that were never built for me. All of it cracked now, all of it finally giving way. Across from me, Micah didn't say anything, but he didn't need to. His shoulders had shifted, just slightly, but enough. He wasn't bracing anymore. He was breathing. Isla, still clutching my hand, looked around in awe. Is this what it's like to be famous? I laughed, and it came out like light. Not from arrogance, but from something warmer. Deeper. A part of me I'd buried. I squeezed her hand. No, baby. This is what it's like to be respected. She leaned into me, head on my shoulder, and whispered, if they didn't put us in the garage, the limo wouldn't have found us. That one sentence punched through every scar I'd tried to patch. It was true. Brutally, beautifully true. Sometimes you're thrown aside not because you're unworthy, but because life needs you in the exact right place to be seen. Margot hung up her call and turned back to me. You ready to talk about your story? I nodded, still holding Isla close. Yeah, I said. Let's start. As the car pulled away from the house, I caught one last glimpse of Veronica and Blake through the mirror. They hadn't moved, still locked in place like mannequins. My mother's hand hovered over her wine glass, unsure whether to pick it up or let it fall. I didn't wave. I didn't blink. The garage had been their way of saying I didn't belong. But now, the world had answered for me. And it wasn't done. Margot reached into her bag and pulled out a thin envelope. There's something else I wanted to give you tonight, she said, her voice calm, but her eyes lit with something more. Something I think you'll want to see. They never said sorry. Not my sister, not my mother, not a single soul from that perfect dining room. A year passed, and silence was their apology. A silence wrapped in cold tradition and polished silverware, still pretending that banishing your own blood to a garage was just logistics. I never asked them to speak. I stopped waiting for the kind of love that only shows up when it's convenient. And when the text came, 2 lines, no punctuation, I stared at it like it was written in a language I no longer understood. Hope you're well. Miss you sometimes. I read it once, then twice, and then I did something I never thought I'd have the strength to do. I replied, we're doing fine. Hope you are too. No anger, no plea for understanding, just peace. A peace that came from not needing to be chosen anymore. This year, Thanksgiving looked different. There were no chandeliers, no lemon polish, no bone china. Just soft lighting, laughter echoing off the walls, and friends, real ones, passing dishes without judgment. Hila sat on the couch, surrounded by pillows, giggling over whipped cream, and Micah helped pour cider with the calm pride of a boy who finally believed his world was solid. There was no table big enough for everyone to sit at once, but somehow it felt fuller than it ever had. We named our little tradition the table that grew, because it always had space for someone who needed a seat, and this time, no one was told they didn't belong. My book, More Than Scraps, sits on the shelf now, not because I needed to prove anything, but because my story deserved to exist. In ink, in paper, in truth. The keynote happened, too. I stood on that stage with trembling hands and a voice I finally trusted. And when I told the room about the garage, about the paper plates, about the look in my daughter's eyes when she thought she'd done something wrong, they cried with me. And they rose to their feet, not for the pain, but for the woman who kept walking anyway. Sometimes I still wonder what I would have said to my mother if she had asked, if she had shown up. But maybe some stories don't end with a perfect bow. Maybe some leave a quiet bruise that reminds you, you survived. If you've ever been the one pushed to the corner, the one handed the scraps while everyone else feasted, just know this. You don't need their table. You can build your own. And when you do, the right people will show up. Every time. If any part of this story felt like your own, leave me a note. I read everyone like a whispered secret. And if you're still searching for your seat, maybe this channel, Revenge Her Way, is where you begin. We're building something here, one chair at a time.